My name is Ethan Carter, and for the longest time, I believed that hard work would speak for itself. That if I put my head down, stayed out of trouble, and gave more than what was expected, I'd eventually be seen, maybe even respected. That belief lasted until I met Blake Harrison, my boss at Stratford Financial Group, who made sure I knew that no matter how hard I tried, I was never going to be one of them. I was 25 years old, fresh out of college, and hungry to prove myself. I wasn't the smartest guy in the room, but I knew how to work harder than anyone else. I graduated with a business degree from the University of Michigan, summa cum laude, and moved to New York City with just a suitcase, a borrowed $800, and the dream of building something my future self could be proud of. My first apartment in Queens was barely bigger than a closet. The bed creaked like it was haunted, the walls were thin enough to hear every neighbor's fight, and the heater hissed like a dying snake. Still, it was mine. And each morning, I'd wake up before sunrise, put on my only tailored suit, and ride the 7 train to Midtown, hopeful that today would be the day someone would notice. At Stratford Financial, I started as an assistant in the operations department. I made coffee, printed reports, took notes, scheduled meetings, and kept my head down. Most of the team barely acknowledged me, except for Blake. He was the senior VP at the time, mid-40s, sharply dressed, slick hair, with the kind of confidence that made him both magnetic and terrifying. Blake had a habit of reminding everyone just how powerful he was. If you messed up, he made sure you regretted it. If you succeeded, he took credit. And if you tried to outshine him, he made sure the spotlight was never pointed at you again. To him, I was just another kid with a dream, his favorite way of dismissing me. Carter, he'd call out, loud enough for the floor to hear, "Get me that quarterly breakdown. And next time, bring coffee that doesn't taste like a tire fire." The office would chuckle, always politely, never genuinely, but I'd force a smile and comply. I wasn't blind. I saw how Blake operated. He surrounded himself with sycophants, never allowed dissent, and protected his position like a dragon guarding gold. But I believed, maybe foolishly, that if I worked hard enough, I could earn his respect. Outside work, my life wasn't much different. I didn't party. I didn't date. I barely even rested. My best friend, Lucas Reynolds, would often text me, "Bro, are you alive?" To which I'd respond with screenshots of spreadsheets and graphs. Lucas and I had grown up together in Detroit. He stayed back home and opened a car detailing shop, living a slower, simpler life. He didn't understand why I pushed myself so hard, but he supported me regardless. "I'm telling you, he said once over the phone, "you don't need that place to make you who you are. You've always been the smart one, man. You could start your own thing if you wanted." I laughed. Start what, exactly? A financial firm out of my shoebox apartment. He was quiet for a second. Why not? I brushed it off. The idea felt impossible. Who would take a no-name assistant seriously? Still, the thought lingered. One Thursday evening, after another brutal day, I stayed late cleaning up a mistake Blake had made in a client report. He blamed it on me, naturally, in front of the whole boardroom. As I sat there fixing formulas in Excel with bleary eyes and a cold sandwich beside me, a janitor named Raymond walked by. He was older, maybe in his 60s, and we'd shared casual greetings before. "You're always here late," he said, pushing his cart near my desk. "Yeah," I replied with a tired chuckle, trying to make something of myself. He looked at me for a moment, then said something I'll never forget. "Making something of yourself doesn't mean letting someone else tear you down first." I stared at him. "What do you mean?" He shrugged. "Just saying, there's a difference between proving yourself to them and proving yourself for you." After he walked away, I sat there for a long time. That night on the train ride home, something shifted. I started thinking less about how to impress Blake and more about how to outgrow him. I didn't know what that meant yet, but I started noticing things differently. The next morning, when Blake made another jab at my tie, I didn't flinch. I started keeping detailed notes on meetings, not for him, but for myself. I read business books during lunch breaks, studied market trends after hours, and quietly explored side ideas that had always been tucked away in my journal. I was still the same Ethan, underpaid, overlooked, but internally, something had begun to crack open. One Friday, a new employee joined, Harper Lee, a sharp analyst from Atlanta with a no-nonsense attitude. She was smart, driven, and not afraid to call things out. On her second day, she leaned toward me after meeting and whispered, "Does he always talk to people like that?" I glanced over to where Blake was holding court at the coffee station.
Yeah.
"It's his charm." She shook her head. "He's not as impressive as he thinks." It was the first time I'd heard someone in that office say what I'd been thinking for years. I smiled. Maybe I wasn't alone after all. A few weeks later, Harper and I got lunch together. She asked about my background, what I wanted long-term, and when I told her I'd always dreamed of starting my own firm one day, she didn't laugh. She said, "You'd be great at it. You actually care." That sentence hit me harder than any insult Blake had ever thrown. Was it possible? Could I really build something my way? Meanwhile, things at work kept spiraling. Blake's grip on power got tighter. He started micromanaging every department, laying off junior staff to make himself look fiscally efficient, and pushing out anyone who challenged his authority. But behind closed doors, I was sketching out ideas. I had a notebook I called the exit plan, filled with strategies, concepts, branding notes, potential services, and names of people I'd want to hire one day. Lucas, when I showed him on a FaceTime call, grinned. "Now you're talking, boss man." Still, I didn't feel like a boss. Not yet. I was just a kid with a dream, like Blake always said. But this time, it didn't feel like an insult. It felt like fuel. Momentum is a strange thing. Once it starts, even in the smallest way, it builds. Quietly, invisibly. And then one day, you realize your life is no longer where you left it. After that conversation with Harper and a few encouraging words from Lucas, I started taking action. Real action. At first, it was small. I signed up for a free webinar about digital marketing. Then I joined a few late-night Zoom calls hosted by independent financial consultants who had successfully left corporate jobs to build their own empires. I didn't tell anyone at work. I knew if Blake even smelled ambition on me, he'd crush it before it could take root. I kept playing the part, still bringing him his coffee, still nodding at his crude jokes. But at night, I was building a foundation. I opened a second bank account and started saving aggressively. Every overtime check, every bonus dollar, rare as they were, and every little refund or side hustle earning went into that account. I called it the Freedom Fund. Meanwhile, the office tension kept escalating. Harper and I grew closer. She was sharp, brilliant, even, and we often stayed after hours to brainstorm business ideas. She didn't know it yet, but she was shaping my future business model. One night over greasy takeout in the empty conference room, she looked at me and said, "You know, Ethan, if you ever do leave this place and start something real, I'd work for you." That hit me hard. "You would?" I asked, genuinely shocked. She laughed. In a heartbeat. "You actually listen. You give a damn. That's rare." I went home that night with a strange cocktail of fear and exhilaration swirling in my gut. The next few weeks were brutal. Blake's insecurity was bleeding all over the office. Word had gotten out that the higher-ups were eyeing a reorganization, and he was paranoid. He doubled down on micromanagement. Started belittling people in meetings, even clients. Morale plummeted. One Monday morning, he stormed into our department holding a stack of reports. "Carter," he barked. "What the hell is this garbage?" I looked up from my desk. He tossed the reports onto my keyboard. "These numbers are wrong. You trying to sabotage me?" I flipped through them. "Actually, I didn't prepare this quarter's figures," Tessa did. "I only consolidated them." He sneered. "Of course. Blame the intern." The room went silent. "I'm not blaming anyone," I said carefully. "I'm just clarifying where the numbers came from." He leaned in close enough that I could smell his mint gum and ego. "You keep pushing it, Carter. You're not as clever as you think you are." He walked off. Later that day, I found Harper in the break room. "He's losing it," she said, pouring stale coffee into a paper cup. "Yeah," I said. "And if he keeps dragging us down with him, we'll drown too." We made a pact that afternoon. We'd both start preparing for the worst. For Harper, that meant polishing her resume and lining up interviews. For me, it meant pushing the exit plan into phase 2. I began researching LLC registration, state licensing, and service niches within the financial industry that were underserved. I realized that mid-level professionals, especially creatives and freelancers, often lacked financial guidance tailored to their world. They didn't need Wall Street, they needed someone who spoke their language. That would be my angle. My company would be called True North Advisory, and it would exist to serve the people traditional firms ignored. But starting a business wasn't cheap. I needed capital and I had none. So I took a risk. I picked up freelance gigs doing budgeting consults for small artists, social media influencers, and online business owners. I found them through Reddit, Twitter, even Craigslist. It wasn't glamorous, but it was income, and I treated every client like they were my first investor. I worked until 2 or 3 a.m. most nights. My body started to protest, sore eyes, aching neck, pounding headaches, but I told myself it was temporary. One night, Lucas called me. "You look like hell, man." We were on a video call. I laughed. "Thanks. I'm building an empire." He grinned. "Nah, seriously. I'm proud of you, bro. You're actually doing it." That meant more than he knew. Then one day, the first real opportunity arrived. A woman named Danielle Park, a lifestyle YouTuber with 500,000 subscribers, hired me for a 3-month retainer to help her optimize her income streams. She found me through a comment I'd left on a finance blog and booked a discovery call. I worked with her for weeks, mapping out affiliate revenue structures, organizing tax strategies, and streamlining her cash flow. At the end of the contract, she paid me double and gave me a glowing testimonial. That testimonial changed everything. Suddenly, other creators began reaching out. "I saw your name on Danielle's story. Do you have room for new clients?" By month's end, I had 6 active clients. My days were still filled with coffee runs and being yelled at by Blake, but my nights were alive with purpose. Then it happened. One Friday morning, HR sent out a company-wide email. Leadership changes effective immediately. Blake Harrison had been demoted. Apparently, a massive error in one of his client reports had cost the firm a 7-figure deal. Upper management had been looking for an excuse, and he'd handed it to them on a silver platter. By lunchtime, his corner office had been emptied. He was moved to an advisory role in a different department with no team, no authority, and no window. The fall was swift. And in a strange way, I felt nothing. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I didn't rush to Harper's desk with celebratory cake. Because by then, I wasn't focused on him anymore. My eyes were locked on the horizon. But Blake wasn't done with me just yet. A week later, he cornered me in the parking garage. "You think you're smart, don't you?" he hissed. I froze. "Excuse me? I see what you're doing. Side gigs. Networking. You think you'll be the next big shot? Let me save you the trouble. People like you don't win." I looked him in the eye. "You might be right, but I'd rather fail building something real than waste my life trying to impress someone like you." He stared at me for a moment, something dark flickering in his eyes, then turned and walked away. I didn't see him again for months. Meanwhile, Harper left the company and joined a startup. She kept cheering me on from afar. True North kept growing. I built a basic website, then a client portal, then hired a part-time assistant, then a brand designer. By the end of the year, I was matching my Stratford salary on the side. I knew it was time. I drafted my resignation letter. I didn't submit my resignation right away. I stared at that email draft for 3 nights straight. Part of me still felt the ghost of Blake's words whispering, "People like you don't win." But another voice, stronger now, was reminding me that I had already won. Quietly, without applause, without needing anyone's permission. When I finally hit send, it was a Tuesday morning. I walked into the office, handed in my badge, and said goodbye to the glass building that had once symbolized everything I thought I needed. There was no grand farewell, no handshake from Blake, no speech from upper management. Just silence. I stepped out onto the street, the sun warming my face, and whispered to myself, "Now we build." Starting full-time with True North Advisory was both exhilarating and terrifying. With no backup plan and no corporate safety net, everything fell on me. I rented a small co-working space in Brooklyn with just enough room for a desk, a whiteboard, and a coffee maker. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I mapped out a real business plan with quarterly targets and KPIs. I structured service tiers, created onboarding flows, and built custom financial dashboards for clients. I offered 2 key services. 1. Financial strategy coaching for independent creators and freelancers. 2. Digital wealth mapping, a signature package that turned disorganized income into long-term, scalable wealth. I kept my rates accessible but competitive. I wanted to be taken seriously. And within the first month, I onboarded 3 new clients from referrals alone. But growth came at a cost. I worked 80-hour weeks. I missed birthdays, skipped sleep, forgot to eat some days. I was learning QuickBooks, negotiating contracts, designing slide decks, and answering emails until 1 a.m. Lucas called me one evening. "Dude, are you okay?" "Define okay," I joked. "You look like you're 3 spreadsheets away from a breakdown." He wasn't wrong. I had underestimated how brutal it could be to build from scratch. One week, a client delayed payment, leaving me short on rent. Another week, my website crashed right before a launch. I even got hit with a small legal scare when a former client claimed I used his IP, completely baseless but stressful nonetheless. There were nights I cried into my keyboard, wondering if I was delusional, if Blake had been right all along. But every time I got close to quitting, something small reminded me of why I started. A text from Harper. "Your client just gave you a shout-out on LinkedIn. Killing it, boss." A late payment finally clearing. A voicemail from a client saying, "Ethan, because of you, I'm no longer afraid to check my bank account." Those moments were my fuel. By the end of year 1, I had 22 clients under retainer. I hired a virtual assistant named Samantha, then a junior advisor named Chris. I moved from a co-working desk to a private suite. My parents, who had once urged me to just stick with the company, finally came around. My mom sent me a framed copy of my business license with a sticky note that said, "Your grandfather would be proud." Then, in year 2, everything leveled up. I landed a partnership with a podcast network that needed financial education for their creators. That deal alone doubled my revenue. I built a financial literacy course, launched a YouTube channel, and started speaking at events. True North Advisory became a name in the digital creator space. And one afternoon, while reviewing resumes for an open strategist role, I saw a familiar name. Blake Harrison. I stared at the screen in disbelief. He had applied for a mid-level position at my firm. At first, I thought it was a prank. But the resume was real, dated, inflated, but undeniably his. A few LinkedIn clicks later, I confirmed it. After being pushed out of Stratford entirely, he'd bounced around minor consulting gigs, and now he was looking for stable work. I called Lucas that night.
"No."
"Freaking way," he laughed. "I know," I said. I thought I was hallucinating. "What are you gonna do?" That was the million-dollar question. The part of me still scarred from his cruelty wanted to delete the application, block his name, and forget he ever existed. But another part, older, calmer, felt something else. Curiosity. I didn't reply immediately. I let a week pass. Then I called Harper. "I need you to sit in on an interview," I said. She raised an eyebrow. "With who?" I emailed her the resume. When she opened it, her jaw dropped.
"No."
"No way." "Way," I said. We set the meeting for Friday. The day of the interview, Blake walked in wearing the same smug expression I remembered, but it cracked the moment he saw me. His eyes flicked to my name on the glass wall. Ethan Carter, founder and CEO. He froze. I stood, extended a hand. "Mr. Harrison, welcome to True North." He shook my hand, hesitantly, and sat down. I could see it in his face. He hadn't connected the dots until now. He thought Ethan Carter was a coincidence. A different Carter.
Nope.
Same Carter. The kid with a dream. We began the interview. I asked standard questions. He tried to maintain composure, but his voice shook at times. He spoke of lessons learned and changing leadership values. He admitted he'd had difficult transitions but was looking for a place to contribute meaningfully. Harper kept her face neutral, but I could see her knuckles tightening on the pen in her hand. When it was over, Blake stood, nodded, and said, "Thank you for your time, Mr. Carter." "Of course," I replied. "Best of luck to you." After he left, Harper turned to me. "Well," I leaned back in my chair. "I don't think I want him here. Not because of what he did, but because this company, it deserves better energy." She smiled. "Proud of you." I didn't call him back. Weeks passed. True North kept growing. We hit our first $1 million revenue year. We opened a second office in Austin. I hired a full executive team. One afternoon, while leaving the office, I saw Blake again. He was sitting in the lobby, dressed plainly, holding a folder. He looked up at me. Our eyes met. He stood. "Ethan," he said softly. I nodded. "Blake." There was a pause. "I just wanted to say, I was wrong about you." Another pause. "And I hope someday you'll believe that I meant it." I didn't say anything for a few seconds. Then I offered a small smile. "I already do." He nodded, turned, and left. That night, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt at peace. Because success, I had learned, wasn't about proving people wrong.
It was about proving myself right.
The next few weeks felt unusually calm. My calendar was booked, the company was thriving, and I had finally settled into a rhythm that didn't involve chasing my own tail. But sometimes, just before the tide shifts, everything gets too quiet. One Thursday afternoon, I was prepping for a live webinar when Samantha walked into my office, her face tight with tension. "Ethan," she said, "you're going to want to see this." She handed me her iPad. The screen showed a LinkedIn post from Blake Harrison. "When the world turns its back on you, remember, talent rises again." Grateful to announce I've been approached to lead a new strategic advisory firm catering to underserved entrepreneurs. More details soon. The logo below the text made my jaw tighten. It was shockingly similar to True North's. Same compass symbol, same navy blue color scheme. Even the tagline was eerily close to ours. "Your path, your wealth, our guidance." Ours read, "Your path, our plan, True North." I stared at the screen in silence. Samantha finally said, "Should we call legal?" "Not yet," I replied. My hands were calm, but inside, I felt the burn. Blake wasn't just trying to rebuild his career, he was trying to mimic mine. Worse, he had already begun reaching out to some of our clients. Quietly, slipping into their DMs and email inboxes, offering fresh strategy with proven leadership. A few forwarded his messages to us, confused but loyal. I knew then, this wasn't over. Blake hadn't accepted defeat. He'd taken the rejection as a challenge, and now, he wanted to play king again. Harper called me that evening. She was furious. "He's stealing your identity, Ethan. You built this thing from nothing." "I know," I said, staring out the office window. "So, what's the move?" "I'm going to call him." Silence. "You sure?" I nodded.
Yeah.
This doesn't end with online games. He needs to hear it from me. The next morning, I dialed his number. He picked up after 3 rings. "Hello." "It's Ethan." A pause.
Well.
"To what do I owe the honor?" he said, sarcasm thick in his voice. "I saw your announcement."
Ah, yes.
"Just a little something I've been working on." "You're using my colors, my logo structure, my messaging." "Please," he said dismissively. "A compass is public domain. Blue is corporate. And as for messaging, we both know financial firms aren't exactly reinventing poetry." I felt my jaw clench. This isn't about creativity. It's about integrity. "Oh, come on, Carter," he laughed. "You didn't invent helping people. I'm just doing what I've always done, bringing vision to chaos." "You mean chaos to vision." He went quiet. Then, "You're angry. I get it. But let me give you some advice. You've had a good run. But markets shift.
People get bored. And you?
You were never more than a fluke." I took a breath.
No, Blake.
"I was a mirror. You just didn't like what you saw in it." He laughed, but there was no joy in it. "We'll see how long you last." "Long enough," I said, to watch you try and fail. Again. Then I hung up. I spent the next 48 hours with my legal team. We reviewed our trademarks, copyright registrations, and client agreements. Thankfully, I'd been meticulous about IP filings from day one. We issued a cease and desist letter within a week. Blake, predictably, posted a public rebuttal, claiming I was trying to gatekeep the industry and afraid of competition. But something strange happened. People didn't rally behind him. They rallied behind me. Former clients, current clients, even creators I'd never worked with reposted his message with comments like, "This is wild. Ethan literally helped me start my brand. This dude is copying him word for word." Stay classy, Blake. There's room for everyone, but maybe not for snakes. I've worked with both. One listens, one lectures. The choice is clear. Within 72 hours, Blake deleted the post. And then something I never expected happened. He showed up. In person. I was leaving a client meeting in our Manhattan office when I saw him in the lobby. Blake. Suit slightly wrinkled. Eyes darker than I remembered. Hands empty. I stopped. "Blake," I said. He nodded. "Ethan." I gestured to the side, and we stepped into the small conference room by the entrance. "I'm not here to fight," he said quickly. "Then what are you here for?" He paused. "To say, I lost. Again. And this time, it's hitting differently." I stayed silent. He went on. For a long time, I thought success was about dominance. Control. Making sure no one ever questioned your authority. "Yeah," I said. "I remember. But seeing what you've built, it's different. People respect you. Trust you. That's something I never had." "Not really." Another pause. "I was wrong about you, Ethan. About everything." I leaned back in the chair. "Apology accepted," I said. "But that doesn't mean I forget what you did." "I'm not asking you to." He stood. "One day," he said, "if you ever feel generous, I'd work for you. Clean slate." I raised an eyebrow. "You really want to work under someone you used to humiliate?" He gave a small, bitter smile. "Maybe it's the only way I'll finally learn something." He left before I could reply. Later that week, Harper stopped by my office. "You gonna take him up on it?" she asked, flopping into the chair across from me. "Not now," I said. "Maybe not ever." She nodded. "Good. We're doing just fine without him." We were. And something about that truth, that quiet confidence, felt better than any revenge. The climax wasn't a public showdown. It was a private reckoning. It was Blake realizing he no longer had power. And me realizing I never needed his permission to win. Some endings are loud, explosive, the kind that echo across headlines and dinner tables. Mine wasn't like that. Mine was quiet, gentle even, like the hum of an engine finally idling after a long journey, like the soft click of a door unlocking, like peace. Months passed since that last conversation with Blake. True North Advisory continued to expand steadily. We launched a mentorship program for young financial planners, created an annual scholarship for underrepresented entrepreneurs, and built an internal culture that focused not just on performance, but purpose. I had gone from the intern with coffee-stained spreadsheets to a CEO hosting panels at national conferences. The recognition was nice, sure, but it wasn't why I kept going. I kept going because every now and then I'd get an email that reminded me what this really meant. One from a single mom in Atlanta. "Because of you, I've finally saved for my daughter's college fund." Another from a comic book artist in Seattle. "I used to think money wasn't for people like me. Now I'm planning for early retirement." Those messages filled the spaces Blake's criticisms used to occupy. And they reminded me daily that the most powerful revenge is success built on service. One crisp October morning, I returned to my old neighborhood in Detroit. Lucas and I had been planning this visit for months. I hadn't been back since True North had really taken off, and it felt surreal walking the same cracked sidewalks where we used to dream out loud. He picked me up from the airport in the same beat-up pickup truck we'd cruised in as teenagers, except now it had custom speakers, leather seats, and his company's logo on the back window. "Look at you. he teased as I loaded my duffel into the back. Big shot entrepreneur coming home. I smiled. Still just me, man. We spent the day visiting old spots. Our high school football field, the taco joint with the broken jukebox, even the alley behind his garage, where we first talked about chasing big things. That night, we grilled steaks in his backyard, and I told him everything.
About Blake.
The fake firm, the cease-and-desist, the final conversation. Lucas listened quietly, nodding. You know, he said finally, a few years ago, you'd have let that guy live rent-free in your head forever. Now, you just let it go. I didn't forget, I said. No, he replied. But you moved on. That's what real bosses do. Back in New York, True North held its second annual retreat. Harper gave the keynote. Chris led a finance workshop. Samantha introduced the new interns. I stood at the back of the room, watching it all unfold. There were dozens of employees now. People from every walk of life. People who believed in something bigger than bottom lines. Someone tapped me on the shoulder. It was Danielle Park, my first major client, and now a board advisor. You're quiet, she said. You okay? Just taking it in. She nodded. You've built something real, Ethan. This isn't just a company, it's a movement. That stuck with me. A movement. Not just away from Blake, but toward something better. Toward dignity. Toward empowerment. Toward the version of me I used to think wasn't possible. A few months later, I received a letter in the mail. It was handwritten, the envelope bearing no return address. Inside was a single page. Ethan, thank you for proving me wrong. Blake. That was it. No apology. No plea. Just a surrender. I folded the letter and placed it in a small wooden box on my bookshelf, next to my old name badge from Stratford and the first True North business card I ever printed. Mementos of who I used to be, and reminders of how far I'd come. People often ask me now, what was the turning point? They expect me to say something dramatic, like slamming the resignation letter on a desk or Blake begging for a job. But honestly, the turning point wasn't a moment. It was a mindset. The day I stopped needing to be chosen and started choosing myself. The day I realized I didn't have to impress anyone to be worthy. The day I stopped chasing someone else's ladder and started building my own staircase. Step by step. Stumble by stumble. Client by client. Not to prove Blake wrong, but to prove me right. Today, True North Advisory stands as one of the fastest-growing boutique firms for digital entrepreneurs in the country. We've helped over 2,000 clients. We've launched community education programs. We've mentored hundreds of young professionals. We've hired people who, like me once, were told they'd never make it. And sometimes, when I walk into our headquarters and see my name on the glass, I smile not because it's my company, but because it's ours. Built from nothing. Built with grit. Built without permission. So if you're reading this, and someone once told you you'd never succeed, don't wait for their approval.
Start anyway.
Fail anyway. Learn anyway. And one day, they just might end up sitting across from you, resume in hand, wondering how the kid they once laughed at became the one writing their future.